Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your time to shine with what was your first ever D&D character? Let us know in the comments below, share the wholesome stories or the cringy ones, we love them both. Half-elf wizard, mage, back in 96-ish. He lasted about 2 hours after his initial creation before dying at the hands of a gray ooze during the first round of combat. A half-elf barbarian. I pestered my brother so much to let me play with him and his friends that he finally just gave in and let me. 20 minutes into my first session, my character was eaten by a giant frog. Now, if we don't count the characters I made in Neverwinter Nights, then my first character was the stereotypical edgy lone wolf. Half-elf, of course, because it's cooler than a human, but not quite as strange as an elf. Gloomstalker Ranger, obviously. Strong, and when he got his subclass, his eyes became pure black, just for a little bit more edge. Now, here's his backstory. Someone murdered his family and tribe while he was out hunting. Now he's trying to find who to take revenge on. I still remember the first session. We played for 7 to 8 hours, and in that time, I had such bad luck that I only hit enemies twice. We had horrible player behavior, like hiding loot, triggering obvious combats while being low on health, and abandoning each other when stuff got real. And we certainly didn't want to stick together after that betrayal either. So many lessons have been learned since then. My first ever character was a human magic user named Galen, with 4 HP and a single use of magic missile to his name. Do note this was an AD&D 1st edition game because that's what my dad knew how to run. Love you and your dad. I've been playing for about a year or two. The first campaign I was in, everyone had to play a pixie. So I was a 6-inch tall zealot barbarian who was ridiculously naive and childish. While everyone else was playing weak spellcasters with a strength of 8 to 10, my pixie by the end of the campaign, and with several homebrewed buffs, had a strength of 26. I've only played 2 other characters so far, but she's the most beloved by me, my friends, and my family. A half-elf bard. He was an adopted used cart salesman who learned how to influence people by working on his father's lot. Played him as a con man during Waterdeep. It was a very fun time. An emo dwarf with a guitar axe. Holy hell, that's awesome! Best campaign I've ever played. Almost got killed by a Behair and a Glasbrew. Summoned by an Enrius. I hope I've actually pronounced all these correctly, which didn't make any sense, but it's my nephew DMing, so no big deal. But we got revenge on the she-devil with combo moves, where my bugbear barbarian buddy decapitated her while I tore her wings off. So frickin' metal and highly dwarvish too. My first character was a human paladin called Brother Job. He lasted 30 real-life minutes as he got crit by a direwolf and then rolled a 3 and a nat 1 on death saves. Subsequent characters lasted longer. My first ever was a tiefling rogue named Morcos Peliodore, whom I've never played but was the first one I ever fully filled out a character sheet for when I taught myself 5th edition in 2015. I was in high school, intrigued by a new hobby that I ended up roping my friends into. Hope you guys still like it today. My very first was a halfling assassin rogue. Practically made for me and completely uninspired. My first made-by-me character was a lizard folk whose wife left him for a wizard, so he became a great wizard out of spite and anger. Meet Lizzie the Wizzy, level 20 wild magic barbarian. I'm a wizard, damn it! So, my first ever was a halfling rogue. Poor little guy never saw any gameplay though. The DM had the group roll stats in order, one at a time, then dictated what we were playing based on our rolls. He was a condescending dick, and I never went back for session 1. The game lasted only a few sessions before everyone else got sick of him. The first character I ever actually played was a human hexblade with a scythe. Good times. Sorry your first DM was a dickhead though. Lannister the Glorious, a dual-wielding bronze dragonborn path of the wild magic barbarian baby. He was the son of the head sorcerer of his tribe, and at a young age, his village was attacked by slavers. While his father rallied the small tribe to defend themselves, they were no match for the slavers, and all were either killed or enslaved. Lannister, being a young but large dragonborn, was soon sold to one of the prominent houses in the region to be trained to fight as a gladiator in the fighting pits. As the years passed, Lannister became a legend in the arena, not only for his reckless fighting style, but for the surges of magic that would erupt from him during his fights. Eventually, as his master grew older and was on his deathbed, he granted Lannister his freedom as a final fuck you dual middle fingers to his sons, who were always bickering over who would take over the house and fortune when he died. From then on, Lannister traveled from town to town looking for that spark of adventure to give his life purpose once again. Mine was a class pulled out of Dragon Magazine. The class was called the Weapon Master. The concept was that the character focused solely on one weapon and ignored every other form of combat. They got some seriously game-breaking stuff first edition and were essentially useless with any and all other weapons. They also could only wear leather armor because anything heavier would hinder their movement. It was a fun class, but it was pretty unbalanced overall. I was 14 and really didn't care about balance though. I just wanted to be Talon from The Sword and the Sorcerer. For me, this is not the easiest question. My first character sheet I ever made was a Dragonborn fiend warlock, but it was very poorly made and not even complete because I didn't know what I was doing. My first proper character, on the other hand, one who had a properly made sheet, a backstory, and a personality, was Jupiter, a paladin of vengeance. Jupiter had a very intricate and over-the-top backstory, involved being raised as the chosen one of a cult, a war, and being possessed. I'm kind of glad he died, due entirely to my own poor decision-making before I could properly explore his backstory. Mine was Livdiel, an Elven monk, later multi-classed into warlock for a bit before she broke her pact and reclassed into fighter. She suffered a lot in her relatively short life. She was only in her 50s, but she persevered. She'll always have a soft spot in my heart. I miss her every day, but her story definitely came to a natural end. Share it in the comments below if you're listening in. I'm sure we'd love to put it in a video. I was the DM until I went to university, and there was my first character, 2002 or 2003. A human rogue in Dragonlance. We love Dragonlance. In the very first session, he got critically hit by the group's barbarian's composite longbow accidentally and was incapacitated, a fate shared by the knight in the group after a few rounds in the same combat. Ah, good times. My first toon that I ended up playing long-term was a sorcerer who was planning to found a magic school with the party's arcane savant, but the universe was destroyed at the end of the campaign. Yep, can't leave us on that cliffhanger. Come on, tell us more. Half-orc Paladin of the Hunt. My DM very graciously allowed me to make him a werewolf using the template in the 5th edition monster manual, making him egregiously OP. He eventually died base jumping off a cliff when I rolled a nat 1 to descend in an effort to save a party NPC that was struggling on the climb. He got up first initially with a nat 20 on athletics check though. The party sent me out to get pizza afterwards. Well, at least you got some good pie out of that. When I was 11, my mum randomly came home one day with the 5th edition Player's Handbook because one of her work friends was planning to run a D&D game. I still don't know if it ever actually happened, though. I had a lot of interest in reading the book and had an idea for an edgy self-insert rogue wizard multiclass because it's what I thought was coolest at the time. Several years later, but still a couple of years before I'd ever actually get to play the game, I brainstormed a character concept that has, over the years, morphed and grown into a behemoth. Starting as a fairly basic dead parents' rogue, who would have been a noble, she turned into a stars druid who had to flee from her parents' home after a political coup. She was raised by wood elves until she found evidence her siblings might still be alive, not knowing what happened to them. They are in the care of far more corrupt nobles. It would be up to the DM to determine how they developed. That concept, I soon realized, is so campaign-specific that I'll hold on to her until the time someday comes. The first character I actually played was a detective grave domain cleric who found solace in how her faith balanced death and wanted to ensure deaths happened at the right time and weren't unduly interfered with. I'm still playing with her in COS. I only got to start playing a bit over a year ago and was the voluntary DM of a fully fresh group for most of that time. Human ranger with a wolf companion. Me, at this point, now cringes at how generic I was at the beginning, but I guess everyone is. This is true. The campaign was so good, though, homebrew, and my character got to grow so much. My wolf companion was insta-killed, and our party eventually split to go do some world-saving stuff. I went on my own to bury my companion, stumbled on a bunch of stuff, and eventually got captured and turned by some werewolves. I then befriended a young dragon prince. All the while, the rest of my party was off resurrecting a dead moon goddess and getting into trouble at the local tavern with a general who we had earlier tricked into thinking he had a venereal disease, STD, and that the only cure was some obscure plant somewhere in the mountains. So I show up, full moon obviously, attempting to resist the change, flying on the back of this dragon to save their asses. By the way, props for Ranger. We love Rangers here. I was a cleric in a game that was basically Skyrim. Just the main storyline and all the stuff in Skyrim. His name was Azul Arcor-Iris. I was an Argonian lizard folk, cleric of Meridia, later Stendar. He was a kind, courteous man with admittedly fewer rules than most clerics. Let's just say I collected the entire series of The Lusty Argonian Maid. 'Twas a beautiful character. Back in the Dark Ages, I had a dwarf. That was it. Race and class combined when we played the original D&D, before Advanced D&D. They had the box set rules. Basic was 1 to 3rd level, Expert was 4 to 14 level, Companion 15 to 25, Master 26 to 36, and Immortal, Demigod to God. If you played a demi-human, it was your race and class, and your levels stopped in the low numbers. But then you got attack ranks, if I remember correctly, that helped you keep up with the human characters. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course let us know about your first ever D&D character. We really want to know about them. And if you want to keep our lights on and our tummies fed, you would do a huge bonus for us if you join our membership. You might get some behind the scenes, but you're guaranteed to get early access to videos regardless. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy. See you next time.